My name is Vanessa. I'm 34 now, and even though it's been 3 years, I still find myself replaying one particular story in my head, trying to understand how something that felt so perfect at the start unraveled into one of the most painful rejections I've ever experienced. What I thought would be the beginning of my forever ended up becoming a wound I haven't even able to fully heal. Before we dive into this story, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Now, let's get into it. It all started when I met Daniel. Unlike the usual faces I scrolled through on dating apps, guys flexing in the gym or posting blurry bar photos, his profile actually had substance. He was 32, worked in logistics, and wrote about music, travel, and his goofy obsession with old sci-fi movies. He seemed like someone real, someone interesting. When we matched, he didn't just send a lazy hey. Our messages flowed easily, and by the time we met in person, I felt this quiet excitement, like maybe something good was about to happen. Our first date was at this small downtown cafe, cozy and full of character, not some loud sports bar or half-hearted grab-a-drink setup. Daniel asked thoughtful questions about my job in client services, remembered little things I'd mentioned earlier, and really listened instead of waiting for his turn to talk. Conversation felt effortless, laughter came easily, and when the staff finally started stacking chairs around us, I didn't want the night to end. Outside, under the streetlights, he kissed me, gentle, confident, just enough to leave me wanting more. It had been years since I felt that spark, and unlike most men who play games, Daniel texted me the very next morning. No rules, no waiting, just honesty. He had a great time, and he wanted to see me again. That sincerity was refreshing. Our second date was at his apartment, something that normally would have made me hesitate, but he cooked an actual dinner instead of ordering takeout, and his place was clean, organized, and welcoming. We ended up talking about everything: family quirks, favorite childhood vacations, and our dreams for the future. Every time his hand brushed mine while we cooked together, I felt this jolt of electricity. By the end of the night, it was impossible to ignore the chemistry. I'd always had this unspoken rule about waiting longer before sleeping with someone, but at 31, I was tired of playing games with men who never offered me real connection. With Daniel, it felt different, natural, intimate, safe. He was attentive, gentle, and made sure I was comfortable. The next morning, he made coffee, and we sat on his balcony like it was the most natural thing in the world. He wasn't distant or cold like so many men after intimacy. Instead, he brushed hair from my face and kept touching me like he genuinely wanted me there. The weeks that followed felt like the start of something solid. We saw each other 2 or 3 times a week, hiking, concerts, new restaurants, or just lazy nights on his couch. He surprised me with tickets to small bands I'd never heard of, but ended up loving. He looked at me with warmth even when I showed up in sweats and no makeup. We built inside jokes, small rituals, a rhythm. When I curled against him during movies, he would absent-mindedly play with my hair, and I felt more cared for than I had in years. But beneath that sweetness, doubts began to creep in. 2 months of dates, nights together, laughter, intimacy, and, yet, no labels. We hadn't talked about exclusivity. Technically, he could still be seeing other women, though nothing about his behavior suggested it. Still, I found myself spiraling, analyzing his texts, feeling jealous when he mentioned female coworkers, or uneasy when he went out without me. Friends would ask about my boyfriend, and I'd awkwardly correct them, admitting that we weren't official. Embarrassment grew into frustration. I started to feel like I was giving Daniel everything: my time, my body, my emotions, without the security of knowing he had chosen me in return. I wasn't just his date. I felt like a girlfriend in every sense but the name. Eventually, after one of our dinners, I couldn't take the uncertainty anymore. Over wine in his apartment, I told him I had real feelings and wanted to know if he was ready to build something serious. His expression shifted into surprise, almost like I'd caught him off guard. He told me he liked me, that he saw potential for something real. But 2 months wasn't long enough for him to decide on commitment. He wanted more time, wanted to avoid rushing in because he'd been burned before. On the surface, it sounded reasonable, but inside, it felt like a rejection. I was offering him everything, and still, I wasn't enough for him to claim me as his partner. That conversation changed something in me. Intimacy began to feel one-sided, like I was giving him something deeply vulnerable without the emotional security I craved. So, I made a choice. The next time we were together, I told him I didn't want to continue being physically intimate unless we were exclusive. I framed it as setting boundaries to protect myself, thinking he would understand, maybe even respect me more for standing up for my needs. But instead of reassuring me, Daniel grew quiet. He said it felt like I was using intimacy as leverage to force him into commitment. No matter how I explained that it wasn't manipulation, just self-protection, he looked frustrated and uneasy. From that moment, I could feel him slipping away. Texts became shorter, plans faded, and when we did meet, the easy comfort between us had evaporated. Within a week, he had blocked me completely. Phone, social media, everything. The shock was brutal. One moment, I thought we were building a foundation. The next, I was erased from his life. It felt humiliating, like I had been disposable all along. For 2 months, I gave him affection, loyalty, and vulnerability, only to be discarded the second I asked for commitment. 6 months later, I saw him again by accident, at a coffee shop. My heart raced when I spotted him, but then I saw her. A woman at his side, laughing easily with him, fixing his collar like she'd been doing it forever. Their energy was unmistakably that of a couple. And then, I overheard, they'd been together 6 months, which meant he'd started dating her immediately after cutting me off. When someone approached them, Daniel introduced her as his girlfriend without hesitation. She even mentioned how he'd wanted exclusivity early on, how he introduced her to his family just 2 months in. That crushed me. Wasn't he? That he wasn't ready for commitment. It was that he wasn't ready for commitment with me. The realization was devastating. For months afterward, I stalked their photos online through fake accounts, searching for cracks, but only finding proof of their happiness strips. Family gatherings, smiles that seemed effortless. Each image was another blow. 2 years later, I heard they were engaged. Now they bought a house in the suburbs, the exact place Daniel once told me he hoped to live someday. Every milestone of theirs feels like the life I thought I was building with him, only he's living it with someone else. And here I am, 34, still single, still replaying a relationship that lasted just 2 months, but left scars that feel permanent. Friends tell me to move on, that he wasn't the right one. My sister insists I stop living in the past, but deep down, I'm still haunted by the thought that if I had just been more patient, less demanding, more willing to let things unfold on his timeline, maybe I'd be the one standing next to him now. Instead, I'm stuck with the knowledge that he could give someone else everything I wanted from him: love, commitment, a future, while I remain frozen, angry, and alone.